We're excited to be back here again this year for our annual Veterans Lunch. We have been doing this about 8 years. We did it pre-pandemic and have kept it ongoing. We're so excited because the municipality provides us with a facility, and Haya Eason, who's a member of the facility of the municipality, and also will be doing all of our introduction. Haya is a retired Marine Corps veteran, and she certainly has given so much more to the community and also for our veterans. So at this point, it'll be my pleasure to introduce Haya. Thank you. It's my pleasure to introduce Haya Eason, who is a municipal employee, a resident of Bethel Park, and also a retired Marine from the Marine Corps. Haya?
Welcome, everyone, and thank you for coming to this annual program from the South Park, Bethel Park, and Castle Shannon Chamber of Commerce. At this time, I'd like to introduce the Marine Corps League South Hills Detachment 726 Color Guard. Please stand. We will now have the invocation from our guest speaker, Mr. Benjamin Wright.
Oh, Lord God, King of the universe, we do give you thanks and praise that we can come together in your name. We thank that we can celebrate veterans. We can thank you for serving your nation, and we thank you for this opportunity to break bread and visit with one another as well. And I ask you'll bless the food that's been prepared to give us nourishment and strength and energy that we may more fully be your servants. In Jesus' most holy name we pray. Amen.
We'll now have the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The Vietnam conflict and the military draft cut short his graduate studies and thus accelerated his entry into the U.S. military in 1969. He served on active duty in the U.S. Air Force for 22 years from June 1969 through September 1991. After commissioning, he completed pilot training at Laughlin Air Force Base, Del Rio, Texas, served as a T-37 instructor pilot at Laughlin Air Force Base, and then flew C-130s in Southeast Asia out of Clark Air Base in the Philippines. While flying out of Clark Air Base, he flew special operations airlift missions in Southeast Asia, flew logistics missions in Thailand, Japan, and Korea, and was involved in the refugee airlift out of Saigon up until it fell in April 1975, followed by the U.S. drawdown out of Southeast Asia. He flew C-130 aircraft in the U.S., Europe, and Central America out of Dyess Air Force Base, Abilene, Texas. After a tour at Military Airlift Command Headquarters at Scott Air Force Base, Illinois, he returned to Air Training Command as a T-38 instructor pilot and Wing Staff Officer at Vance Air Force Base, Enid, Oklahoma. He completed his military career as a Deputy Base Commander at Bitburg Air Base in Germany, retiring from the U.S. Air Force in 1991 as a Lieutenant Colonel. While in Germany, the wall came down in Berlin and very quickly opened up Eastern Europe, and he was involved in making U.S.-controlled housing in the now former West Germany available to then East German refugees. He was a part of the team whose work resulted in Bitburg Air Base receiving the Department of Defense U.S. Air Force Installation Excellence Award, Best Air Base in the U.S. Air Force, in 1990. During Desert Storm, he bedded down a U.S. Navy Reserve C-9 unit at Bitburg Air Base and deployed, and then returned three Bitburg F-15 squadrons and full support to Saudi Arabia and Turkey to fly air superiority missions over Iraq and Kuwait.
Thank you, Haya. I just want to thank the people that made this possible today. One is Rowdy Barbecue, who always comes through with our food preparation. Park Social, who's a new restaurant in South Park. Sam's Club provided the cake, and Artist Senior Living also contributed. And I want to thank the municipality for lending us this facility for the day. Thank you so much. And we're going to go right to lunch, and then we're going to have our speaker come on. So enjoy your lunch. Today we're going to also share our sponsor with you, one of our sponsors, and I'm just so excited because they brought some nice mystery baskets and prizes with them today. Rob?
Yes. Hi, Bob Kazarowski with Rudy One Group Platinum. I would like to thank our veterans for all their hard service and support throughout the years, and we have a small little token of appreciation over at the chamber table. If they fill out an entry form, they have a chance to win a board of gift cards and some scratch-offs, just as a thank you for all your service and support.
Thank you again also to all of our veterans. This is Jeannie Bello, SWBC Mortgage here in Bethel Park. And once again, we want to thank you for your service and your years of dedication, and we appreciate you. Thank you and God bless.
I'd like now to introduce our speaker, Ben Wright. Ben?
Well, thank you, and hopefully I don't disappoint you, but I know there's a friendly audience because it looks like most folks here are veterans. And we all know as veterans, we all have a story to tell, and everybody's story is different depending on what branch of service you served in, how long you served, where you served, what you did, are all very different. I had a very rich experience in the military and was greatly blessed by it. Not that there weren't some setbacks and some challenges that came along the way, but it was great. I mean, I started out as a non-volunteer and very quickly became a reluctant volunteer because Vietnam was going on and, of course, the draft. And I finished college, and I wanted a graduate citizenship. What I was able to get, I said, well, no more deferments, but I'll try to finish my master's. So off I went, and sure enough, here comes the draft physical, and shortly followed by an induction notice. And I grew up in a small town in the Big Bend country of Texas, so I knew the lady that was the clerk for the draft board. In fact, I'd gone to school with her sons, and so I'd call her up and say, "What's going on?" I said, "Well, you're going to have to go take a physical next month, and then the month after that, you'll get an induction notice." I said, well, I think if I'm going to do this, I'd rather go in the Air Force and fly airplanes than 98% probability of going in the infantry. And she says, well, that's fine, but let me know you're going to do that because we still have to fill our quotas. And so I took the draft physical and actually enlisted in the Air Force on a delayed enlistment to finish the spring term I was in at Louisiana State University in Baton Rouge. In 1969, and then went to basic training, and in the meantime I'd been working my application to go to officers training school and pilot training, and received my acceptance into pilot training the first week I was in basic training. And so I finished basic training at Lackland, and then did the stuff that an airman does on air bases, whatever else needed to be done for a while, and got moved up a couple classes and went to officers training school in the fall, and then went to pilot training at Laughlin Air Force Base, Texas in January of '70. And I fully expected, assignment into combat aircraft or combat support aircraft to go to Southeast Asia. And much to my surprise, I was one of the original, what they called plowbacks, and soon became first assignment instructor pilots. And they actually kept me at Laughlin on a control 3-year tour as an instructor pilot in T-37s, which was a wonderful opportunity to work with student pilots. When I went through the instructor training, we had this list of common student errors. Well, I'd made almost every one of them. So that was helpful, really, because I could work with people to explain to them, how I overcame, whatever they were, and help people go through that. And being a controlled tour, and then from there I got an assignment to go C-130s and went through the 130 school at Little Rock Air Force Base, Arkansas, and then went to Clark Air Base in the Philippines. And I went through all the tactical training, the airdrop and airland, and all the training at Little Rock, and fully expecting to stay qualified in that at Clark, but I got there and they were using most of the crews to fly logistics because of the cost of maintaining currency for all the tactical events. So I flew a lot in Thailand because at that time I went over there in 1974, so it was after the 73 peace accords, so we were, quote, at peace. But the Air Force was still up in Thailand, and we would go to Thailand and fly what they call Klong Hoppers, fly 8 sorties and go to all the bases in Thailand carrying people and parts and groceries and stars and stripes and fly 8 sorties a day going around to the various air bases. And then in April '75 it became very obvious that South Vietnam was going to fall, and of course the North Vietnamese pushed across the DMZ testing to see if the U.S. was going to respond, which with the political climate at that time we didn't. And so then it became a concern, well, we got some stuff in South Vietnam that we don't want the North Vietnamese to have. So I was able to participate in a couple of missions to get things out of South Vietnam that we didn't want the Communist North to have. And then most of you probably know from the history of it, the ambassador to South Vietnam really didn't think that Saigon was going to fall, and everybody around him knew that it was. And so he very much delayed evacuating people. So as a last minute thing, for about 4 days, we did a maximum effort airlift to airlift refugees out of Saigon, and most of the people that we were airlifting were Vietnamese who had worked for the U.S. military or else were in the Army of the Republic of Vietnam, and allies who had worked that we knew that if they stayed there, things would not go well for them, and the re-education camps after Saigon fell were not a very good experience for the people that didn't get out. But we were flying 24 hours a day, and we were loading up refugees, so we would, I'm sure many of you flew on C-130s if you ever were in the military at all, and we would just put down pallets, cover them with cardboard, put tie-down straps across the cargo compartments so people had something to grab onto, and we'd taxi in, shut down the inboard engines, open the aft ramp and door, and the embassy, of course, was who was clearing anybody that came to get on. So they brought out all these busloads of people, and they put people on sardine class till no more could get on, and then we buttoned up the aft ramp and door and started up the engines and taxied out and took off. And they had it down to where we were only on the ground for about 15 to 20 minutes, and we'd unload 220 people. So you can imagine if you flew in a 130 having 220 people in the back, but the people that were there were pleased to get there. And we took them either to Clark Air Base or QB Point at Subic Naval Base, and they went into refugee camps, and then later were airlifted to Guam, and then from there went to the States by contract civilian aircraft. And I've run into a number of Vietnamese who immigrated to the U.S. in that period of time. In fact, there's a pretty significant population here in Pittsburgh, and we've been able to get some of them on some of our online programs to share their story. And when I was in South Texas many years later, I came across a physician who was working in a public clinic who said he came out of Saigon about noon on the 28th of April, '75, which was the last day that I flew as a young boy. And he said, well, you may have been on my aircraft, I don't know, but he was a very competent physician who was doing a lot particularly for people who either didn't have health insurance or were underinsured at the time. In doing that, when I left Clark, I went to Dyess Air Force Base, Texas. At that time, there were still a lot of forces in Europe. The Cold War was still on, and but because of congressionally controlled ceilings on the number of people who were there permanently in Europe, the C-130s did rotation. So you would go to either Rhein-Main at Frankfurt, Germany, or Mildenhall in England on 60-day temporary duty assignments and fly airlift. The one I went on, I was primarily flying in the Mediterranean or in Turkey and a lot of places. And then when I left Dyess, at the time I came to Dyess, because of some issues, I became a single-parent father. I said, well, I think I'm going to try to get me a headquarters tour where I'm not going anywhere while I'm a single parent. So I've had an opportunity to go to Military Airlift Command headquarters at Scott Air Force Base, Illinois, on a 3-year control tour. And I wound up on the briefing team that we briefed the commander-in-chief, the 4-star, every morning on airlift operations all over the world. And then from there, I was still a single parent, and I says, I think I need to go fly around a flagpole instead of living out of a suitcase. So I volunteered to go back to Air Training Command, which a lot of people weren't crazy about doing, but went to the T-38 and went to Vance Air Force Base, Oklahoma, and there was for 4 years. And I wound up working a staff job as well as flying with the squadron, working for the Deputy Commander of Operations, with wing scheduling and flight records and a whole bunch of other assorted things. And then I looked at it and said, well, my sons need a European tour, and I'm really ripe for a remote tour, which is the last thing I needed as a single parent. So I says, I'm going to volunteer for a job in Germany that nobody else wants. And so I became the Air Base Operability Officer at Bitburg. And what that was the whole thinking that an air base needed to be able to sustain attack. And of course, there was the real concern about chemical weapons in with the Soviets and all those things, and then recover, fill in all the holes in the runway or whatever, and continue to operate. And my job was to coordinate with people all over the wing to help us do that. And the people I picked up working for me had not been treated very well or provided what they needed. And it's the old thing, if you're a servant leader and you give people what they need, they'll perform amazing things. And so the quality of what they were doing in the NATO inspections and all those sorts of things was significantly improved just because you encourage people to do what they needed to do. And so the wing commander was real happy with me, so I wound up being the Deputy Combat Support Group Commander or Deputy Base Commander at Bitburg, which was amazing, which is completely on the sports side of the house, which means, you're working with civil engineering, security, police, services, squadron, all the various base support things. And they were going to do another exercise similar, if you were familiar with what they called it, Salty Demo. They had at Spangdahlem Air Base. It was on the other side. And they realized on this whole air base operability thing that there were a lot of deficiencies that needed to be corrected. And that's why they created these positions that I went into. And they wanted to run another exercise. And so I agreed to stay at Bitburg until they did constant demo that was going to happen in '91. But of course, along comes Desert Shield and Desert Storm. So that got canceled, and instead we deployed the wing to either Saudi Arabia or to Turkey, to Incirlik or Al-Kharj. And Al-Kharj at that time, in the middle of Saudi Arabia, in the Air Force, we had this thing about mobility, that you had to be able to deploy to a bare base. And a bare base meant you had a runway and you had a water supply and you didn't have anything else. And so we deployed everything down there, and all the prime beef and Red Horse and the air crews and the maintenance, and put up a tent city out in the desert. And they started operating flying caps over Iraq. And in fact, the wing I was in was an F-15 wing, and they were credited with shooting down anything that took off out of the Iraqi Air Force. So very quickly, the U.S. established air superiority, which you have to do. And then I'd put in my, for retirement, and that was delayed a little bit by Desert Storm. But we got everybody home except for an explosive ordnance disposal flight that I'd helped start when I was the Chief Air Base Operability. They were still in Kuwait, of course, with no shortage of different unexploded munitions and things they had to deal with. And, and I came back. I had in my mind for a number of years to go into ordained ministry. And in fact, I left Bitburg on terminal leave. And I started school at Trinity School for Ministry in Ambridge, Pennsylvania, just up the road from here in Beaver County. And I was still on active duty the first month I was there, and then officially retired. And so, it was wonderful because out of the military, I had my military retirement, and at that time, the military GI Bill just about equaled my tuition. So you went to reduced standard of living, you could press on. And then I served churches, small churches and multiple churches in Wyoming, in South Texas and New Mexico. And then I came back here in 2010 and worked on the staff at Trinity School for Ministry for 5 years. And I'm still serving 2 small congregations in Steubenville, Ohio and Carnegie to keep them going that want to continue. So I also enjoy working with veterans organizations. I do a lot of volunteer work with the Veterans Breakfast Club. And if you hadn't been to the Veterans Breakfast Club, then I see lots of familiar faces that participate. And one of probably our largest in-person breakfast is at Christ United Methodist Church here in Bethel Park. And we'll next be there on Saturday, the 21st of December. And they always have a great program. And essentially, from the middle of March through December, we're in Bethel Park every other month, and also online programs on every Monday evening, and most Thursday evenings. The Thursday evenings primarily focus on World War II. This year we spent a lot of focus on the air war in World War II. And so you meet a lot of people. So it's kind of interesting when the pandemic came along that overnight, the Breakfast Club went from all in-person events, about 65 to 70 a year, to exclusively online, and now it's a hybrid where there's generally about 3, maybe 4 in-person events a month from March through December, but we get people from literally all over the world online. There are some Veterans Breakfast Club magazines on the that Haya Eason brought with the American Legion table back there, and I have more in the car if you want some more. That gives you the schedule, and those come out quarterly, and if you get on the mailing list for that, you get the free magazine once a quarter, and you'll find out about events. I'm also a mentor in the Beaver County Veterans Treatment Court, which gives you a great opportunity to help out folks. And so I appreciate all of the organizations that are involved in doing this and honoring veterans and honoring me by asking me to come and speak. But encourage young people to go in the military. We need them, and it's a very beneficial time. It certainly was for me. I had no intention to make a career out of it, but wound up being a wonderful blessing. Any questions at all? Well, I'll give it to Connie, and thank you all so much.
Thank you for coming. We thank all of you for coming this year. We don't have as big a crowd as we usually have. Don't know where they are. We called them, and, there's so many issues going on today that who knows. Could be a shortage of drivers, too, for their vans to bring them here. Okay, we have one last. Bob, you want to mention anything about? You want to say anything?
Thank you, Connie. This will be fast. I want to mention a program that benefits all veterans. But first, I see so many of my fellow Marines in the audience, so I need to ask everyone this pop quiz question. What must you do to determine someone is a Marine? Nothing, they'll tell you. Say? And I'm a Marine E5, 0311. Semper Fi, man. What I'm here to talk about is the Animal Friends for Veterans program. This is a program that runs on lateral tracks with the Guardian Angels service dog program. Big facilities being built out toward the airport. And Guardian Angels was brought to Pittsburgh by a good friend Tony Accomando. And they have placed dozens of service dogs with veterans who have a high degree of PTSD or physical challenge or just simply emotional, complex emotional situations. They realize that they cannot give a $27,000 2-year-long trained dog to every veteran that might have an issue. And they asked me if I would start this program at Animal Friends. And as a result, we place a companion animal with any veteran fee-free. There is a host of companion services that go with that. I have flyers here, so if you're interested, grab one. But it's the full range of every support that the veteran might need, including specialized training, not to the degree of a service dog. But if the animal needs to be acclimated to a wheelchair or something like that, we train the animal. So all of this is free to the veteran, so we'd like you to spread the word. And I'd like to end with the acknowledgement to the Bethel Park Chamber and Connie, who are sponsoring this program here within Bethel Park and just recently expanded it to the entirety of the South Hills. So thanks for your attention, and let me know if you have questions.
I also want to thank all the hardworking, our military ladies that came here early and helped set up. They were really just digging in, never gave up. We have one last announcement, and that is for our big prize that we have. Gina, do you want to come up, and Rob? If you didn't get a chance to put your card in there, you get that whole poster board of gift certificates. Anybody else have to put in? Everybody in? You go shopping as soon as you leave here. Rob and Gina are members of the chamber, and they have kindly brought this so that we could enjoy this along with the luncheon.
And hopefully you enjoy. We have a bunch of, scratch-offs and fun little places to go for dinner and things like that.
So everybody has your name in?
Everyone has their name in? Okay, super. And Connie, you can be the person.
Oh, you're going to blame me? Yeah. Okay. Whoop.
Since you're holding the microphone, that'll be best.
Okay. I won't even look.
And again, thank you all for your service.
Yep.
And all
Yeah, Rob.
through Helping America. So thank you.
Jim Sippey, Sippey.
Oh, there you go. Thank you so much, yeah. Yeah, Brian, you wanted to make an announcement for the Rotary?
Actually, I would just want to make an announcement. Anybody who's available, I chair the Upper St. Clair Veterans Park Observance Committee. So we will be there at 9:30 at the Municipal Building at the beautiful Veterans Park. And I have arranged to have a C-17 flyover. We have a young lady who will be our speaker from the Coast Guard. The program's only 35, 40 minutes, but we have the kids in high school, middle school kids and some things. So if you're not doing anything, Monday again at 9:30, we'd love to see you right there at the Municipal Building in Upper St. Clair. Thanks.
Again, thank you all for coming.